حي على الفلاح.
One of the greatest ulama of the 20th century during our time and our era is Shaykh Nasiruddin Al-Albani, a mujaddid. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam mentioned in an authentic hadith. He said every 100 years, Allah Azza wa Jalla will send forth someone who's going to revive this ummah. Not that Al-Islam became old or Al-Islam died, but something will happen in this ummah where the religion that the Nabi was on, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and his companions, the community will be falling short of the mark in different aspects. And Allah will always send a reviver to renew and to call the people back to that which was known during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the first mujaddid of this ummah, according to most of the ulama of al-hadith, the very first one was the great scholar Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And then after him, people came. Many of the ulama of al-Islam considered Al-Albani not just to be a scholar, but to be a mujaddid. Something about his personal life, and a lot can be said, is that he was a white man. Al-Albani was from Albania. He wasn't an Arab. He grew up in Albania. He was born, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the year 1914, and he died in the year 1999. So he lived for 85 years. You may have heard of Al-Albani, but I tell you, we don't know how he was and how his dawah was. And today, there are those people from the people of knowledge, ulama, who some of the people from our community really praise them. And rightly so, they deserve to be praised, but not on the level of Al-Albani. When Al-Albani was here, the Salafi community all across the globe, along with Al-Imam ibn Baz, Al-Imam ibn Uthaymeen, the Salafi community across all of the globe, they had three individuals who were really competent and qualified to be the instructors of the people. They don't deserve ghulu, going overboard. Al-Imam Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, in his early life, lived in Albania. And the people were secularists in Albania at that time. The leader of Albania, Al-Islam, was being something that was not popular. The Muslims were weak to this very day. You meet an Albanian Muslim many times, you won't see the remnants of Al-Islam. Not all of them, but Islam is da'if in that area. Al-Albani's father saw the need to make hijrah with his children and his family to leave Albania. And he went with his family to Syria. And that's where Al-Albani was able to learn the Arabic language, and he was a prolific person in the Arabic language. His father was actually one of the leading scholars of the Hanafi madhab, and he taught his son, Shaykh Nasiruddin Al-Albani, tajweed of the Quran. He taught him the fiqh according to the Hanafi madhab. At an early age, the age of 20, he began to specialize in al-hadith, the very first project that he started to approach, and in a way where he tried to get away from blind following. He dealt with one of the most important books in Al-Islam, one of the most used books in Al-Islam. So a book that has a lot of good in it, and it has some problems in it as well. The people of the Turuq al-Sufiya rely on the book, and it's none other than the book of Al-Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, Ihya Ulum al-Din. This is one of the most famous books in Islam. Has some good stuff in it, and it has some problems in it as well. One of the great scholars of Al-Islam, Al-Imam Abdurrahim ibn Hussein Al-Iraqi, Al-Hafidh Al-Iraqi. He wrote a book called Al-Mughni, in which he made the takhrij, and he gave where are the ahadith that were in this book, Ulum al-Quran. Al-Ghazali's book has a number of ahadith in it. Al-Imam Al-Iraqi, who's a muhaddith, he came and he started to take those hadith out, just the hadith, not the other kalam of the book, and he dealt with that. Al-Albani came and he dealt with that book right there. and he started to grade those ahadith, over 5,000 hadith. When he did that, rahimahullah ta'ala, was quite apparent, it was quite clear that Allah ta'ala blessed him with deep knowledge, deep insight. In the year 1960, Al-Imam Al-Albani became popular in Syria. The Syrian government has always been secular and problematic. The Syrian government became aware of him, and they became afraid of him, as they were afraid with any cleric at that time who had something to say other than the clerics of innovation, kufr, and bid'ah. So they began to put Al-Imam Al-Albani under surveillance. He saw there was going to be a problem. He became more well known. So the great eminent scholar Shaykh Ibn Baz, he was the vice president in the university there in Medina, Al-Jamiat Al-Islamiyah. When it first started, they realized and they recognized and they acknowledged the position of Al-Albani. So they brought him to Al-Medina, and he came to Al-Medina and he started to teach. And not only was he a teacher during that time when it first started, that blessed university, but he sat on the board of the other ulama and the directors who made the decision to bring Muslim youth from all over the world in order to spread the correct understanding of Al-Islam. They did not compel anybody. You came from Gambia, you came from Senegal, you came from Pakistan, you came from India. They did not compel you to get off of your madhab. But what they did in the subject of al-fiqh, they came up with a way of teaching what's known as comparative religion, comparative fiqh, where they would take those issues and give all of the positions of the madhahib and let you, the student, decide and determine which was the best position based upon the dalil. So Al-Imam Al-Albani had a lot to do with the way the university was at that particular time. When he was there in Al-Medina, something happened that is really important concerning the history of Al-Albani, because he's unique. When he went to Saudi Arabia, you know this myth of Al-Wahhabi. Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab is not infallible, he's not ma'soom, and we don't blindly follow him. But he had a lot with eradicating shirk in the Arabian Peninsula. He had a lot to do with many of the students and many of the people who were affected by his dawah going to West Africa and also waging war against the shirk and kufr, like Uthman bin Fodio, who throughout West Africa that dawah of Tawheed spread. Al-Imam al-Shawkani in Al-Yemen, that people were cursing the companions and doing all kind of stuff, worshiping graves and other than that. And Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Shawkani was affected by him. Scholars who came from Algeria, from Libya, these people, they were impacted and affected. From India, they were affected. Muhammad Siddiq Hassan Khan, affected by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. The point is, when Al-Albani arrived in Arabia, he criticized some of the positions and opinions of the so-called Wahhabis. And that's a myth. There's no thing called Wahhabism. But those ulama who were in Arabia, some of them were staunch on certain positions. Even Al-Imam al-Shawkani from Yemen, he used to write letters to some of the followers of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he used to tell them, it is not acceptable for you to make blanket takfir against any and every Muslim who worships a grave. Maybe he's worshiping the grave without knowledge. So sometimes because of the fervor to spread a tawheed, some of them were quick to brand some people excommunicated from Al-Islam. Al-Albani did the same thing. When he went to Arabia, he saw some of the positions in his opinion were not supported by the strong dalil, but some of the ulama were taking the position of the madhab. But Al-Albani was against that type of taqleed and that type of being very stern and with no flexibility. When he did that, he started getting problems from some of the scholars and some of the people in Arabia. One of the things that he did was, as most of you know, in Arabia, better than most Muslim countries is the way their women dress. Not only the way their women dress, but the position that their women have in society is better than Libya. And there are men in Libya who are taking care of their women. It's better than Pakistan. And there are Pakistanis who take care of their women. I'm talking about in society in general. The Gulf states, the Muslim women in the Gulf state, those people to this day, it appears that their women are in a better condition than most women from this ummah. Al-Albani disagreed with the thing about the niqab. He said, I don't think that it's wajib. And he wasn't quiet about it. He wrote books about it. And he used to challenge people to come. You don't have to take my position, but let us discuss the issue based upon dalil. He wasn't a yes man. He wasn't afraid of people. And that's one of the characteristics that everybody would acknowledge about Shaykh Nasiruddin Al-Albani. He did not care who you were, with respect, not with arrogance. He didn't care how much money you had. He dealt with people properly, but he didn't hide his opinion. When he did that concerning some fiqh issues, he started to have some problems with some of the people there. And it ultimately led to him not renewing his contract in the university, and he left Al-Medina and he went back to Syria. When he went back to Syria, he was arrested, as a number of people were arrested. Some time went by, he got out of the prison. Al-Imam ibn Baz, rahimahullah, again got involved and brought Al-Imam Al-Albani back to Saudi Arabia, where he began to work in Mecca. And he was working in the institution of Sharia. And again, his knowledge began to spread all over the place once again, but he was not without his enemies. And once again, he left. Al-Albani went back to Arabia to perform Umrah, to meet the people that he knew in 1998. And we were studying at that time. We had heard about him. Every week at that time, there were some tapes that were coming. He had a student by the name of Abu Layla. Abu Layla, he started taping all of the sit-ins with Al-Albani. If people came to visit him, he would tape it and you can hear the discussion. If someone came to debate him, he would tape it and you can hear the debate. If Al-Albani went to someone's house to eat, or someone came to one of his students' house, the students got together, there was a wedding, he would tape that. And from those tapes, the world started to become exposed to him. Every 2 or 3 days, you would get 3 or 4 tapes coming to Medina. The students were waiting for those tapes as if they were something that was precious. We got to hear the names and the voices of his students. We got to see how he was discussing and dealing with all kinds of people. His debates with takfiri people, all kinds of issues. Anyway, the point is, 1998, he came to Al-Medina, and at that time he was asked in a majlis, are you upon the Zahiri madhab, the 4 madhabs? And then one of the lesser known madhabs is the Zahiri madhab. It's bona fide, respected madhab, has its issues, but nonetheless, Al-Imam Ibn Hazm was upon that madhab, and no doubt, Al-Imam Ibn Hazm is weighty in the religion, but the madhab have some problems. Some people said that Al-Albani affirmed and said yes, which is a controversial madhab, but it's not true. I personally asked a number of his students who said Al-Imam Al-Albani was not connected to any of the well-known madhahib. He respected each and every one of those madhabs, but his da'wah was to a tajreed. A tajreed means to take your emotions and your desires out of the equation and to take a position solely based upon the dalil. What is the proof saying? Irregardless of what the elders said, irregardless of what the madhab said, irregardless of what your imam said, irregardless of what's popular, what did the dalil say? So it doesn't appear that he was upon any of those madhahib. Many other things can be mentioned, ikhwani, concerning the life of Al-Imam Al-Albani in that regard. I just want to mention very quickly before we give you a glimpse into the Salafiyya of Al-Imam Al-Albani. The ulama of this century who are worth something, qualified, competent, those ulama had words of praise for Al-Imam Al-Albani. And as we mentioned, Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, pleasing all of the people is something that is impossible. There's no one who's going to please all of the people. And Al-Albani won't please all of the people. He had some serious enemies who had animosity towards him, to the point where someone paid a man to physically beat him up. And he was beat up in the street of Syria. The man, young man, went and beat the old man up in the street. So he had enemies. He's about to make the salah. The man gets ready to make the takbir, the imam, Sufi. He turns around, he sees Al-Albani in the line. In front of all of the people, he tells him, get out. And he's screaming at him in the masjid that he can't pray in the line. In his history, he had a lot of enemies from the people of the Sunnah, unfortunately, due to envy and jealousy, and obviously from people of innovation due to his dawah and understanding of Islam being diametrically opposed to their dawah. When we were getting to know Imam Al-Albani, I personally never heard in Arabia, and this is not a criticism, it's about Al-Albani. I never heard the lectures, the khutbahs, the cassette tapes of any of the speakers. There was no one at that time who we heard who cried more than Al-Albani. He used to tape some of the calls people would call all over the world to get fatwas. Lady called him from Algeria. The lady called him, I want to tell you the dream. He said, what's the dream? And you could tell he was busy. What's the dream? The lady said, I saw the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in my dream. And he was walking down a path. And he walked down the path and he disappeared down the path. And I wanted to know, where did he go? So my friend in the dream, a lady was on the balcony. She called out to me and said, who was that sheikh? She said, when the Prophet walked down the path, there was a man, a sheikh, walking behind him looking for him. My friend from the balcony said, who was that sheikh following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The lady said, sheikh, you were that sheikh. I told my friend, that's Shaykh Nasiruddin Al-Albani. It was just a dream. And then after that, you can hear on the recording, Al-Imam Al-Albani started crying profusively. He couldn't stop crying. Wallahi, ikhwani, when we heard that, and we used to sit together and we used to listen to the different lectures, a debate, a discussion, a dinner, anything. Here's a lady calling about a dream. When he broke down and he started crying like that, everybody was impacted by that. But you get a feeling that this is a man of ikhlas. One of his students, his name is Zuhair, or Samir al-Zuhairi. He's present right now. He did some serious works in the different books of al-Hadith. He said that he knew a man who was an enemy of Al-Albani. He was swearing and cursing about Al-Albani. The Sheikh Samir, who's a student, said, look, do you know the Sheikh? He said, I don't know him. He said, well, the Sheikh is beyond and higher than being spoken about like this by you, and you don't even know him. But I'm going to have a dinner. You can come and you can meet the Sheikh. He said that he invited a number of students of knowledge that came to the dinner, and he never told the Sheikh about that man's presence in the dinner. He said that the man overwhelmed the assembly by talking, and he was very aggressive, overwhelming, overpowering in the way that he put his point across. He said that he and Albani started to discuss, and the man was rough and tough. But the man found that Al-Albani was easy. The owner of the house, the host, Sheikh Samir, he said, I became embarrassed and angry the way he was dealing with the Sheikh who was my guest. He said that the Sheikh said to me, don't worry, take it easy. So they began to discuss. The man who was rough and tough and opposed to Al-Albani saw he couldn't deal with his dalil, and he couldn't deal with his adab, with the way he behaved. At the end of the discussion, the man said to Al-Albani, Alhamdulillah, I met you after you changed. Because what I heard was you never accept the truth, and you're a person who's stubborn. And Al-Albani said, I didn't change. Here's a man who's been with me for 20 years. Ask him, I am who I am. You ever met me before to say that I changed? The man said, no. He said, I never changed. He said, but I ask you, by Allah, to forgive me if I have hurt you in any way. And he started crying in front of the people. The man started crying. That man became Salafi as a result of that, and he became from the students of Al-Imam Al-Albani, who were well known during this time. Al-Albani's love for the Sunnah and his hatred for innovation. When he was living in Saudi Arabia, he was driving on the highway in Jeddah. One of the things that people know about him is that he drives his car very, very fast. People used to complain to him about it, criticize him and advise him, don't drive your car like that. He was a fast driver. He had an accident, his car tipped over, could have died. When the people came to help him, he didn't die. they were saying something that's a famous statement of the Arabs. If something happens that's bad, the Arabs say, Ya Satir, which means, oh Allah, Ya Satir. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He covers up. May Allah cover you up from being harmed. May Allah protect you. If the lady sees her child about to grab the boiling water, the mother will say, Ya Satir, Ya Allah. So when they came up to the Shaykh, he's upside down in an accident. When they came to see what was happening, Shaykh Nasiruddin Al-Albani told the people, don't say Ya Satir, Ya Satir. Say Ya Satir. Satir is not a name of Allah. Allah is a Satir. Then he told him the hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's upside down and told him the hadith that the Nabi told the people sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah Ta'ala is Satir, not Satir. He loves it when you conceal the faults of people. He loves it when you conceal your own aura. He loves it when you conceal your issues, your mashakil, whatever. The point here is, in a situation like that, who's going to be teaching hadith and the person is almost dying? When Al-Albani was in Saudi Arabia, from the practice of the Saudi Arabian society is anyone of prominence, if they come in, everyone has to stand up. And if you don't stand up, people are going to get upset with you. It's a sign of disrespect. That's not only in Arabia, that's in most cultures. And it's something that came to the Muslims from the A'ajim, the non-Arabs and the non-Muslims. So there are some hadith where the Prophet told us, don't stand up for people. In the Adab al-Mufrad of Al-Imam Al Bukhari, anyone who expects and wants people to stand up for him, he wants it, gets upset if you don't. The Prophet said, let him prepare his place in the hellfire. Abdullah ibn Abbas said, when the Prophet would come in, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we would not stand up for him because we knew that he hated it. So the companions didn't stand up for anyone. This is what the Romans did, this is what the Persians did. And Al-Albani used to take issues like that and he used to spread them out to the people and let the people know about them. Now, of course, he didn't do it in a way which was abrasive. He didn't do it in a way in which it turned people away from him. He gave the people the opportunity to ask, and once they asked and he opened his mouth, you're going to listen to the way he talks. That's the Salafi of Al-Albani. So his love for the Sunnah was well known. Another issue, Ikhwani, is the generosity of Al-Albani. Al-Albani came from a poor home in Albania, and as he grew up, his father made watches, and he made watches after his father. He did some carpentry in between there, but he was miskeen. But as he started to write, he started to make some money. He won the King Faisal Award, and he received quite a large sum of money, but his books were some of the most wanted and sought after books in the marketplace. So he began to make some money. Al-Albani didn't keep that money. He wasn't a stingy person. Just like Al-Imam Ibn Baz, who we saw with our own eyes. The African man come up to him and he needed some help. He's a student of knowledge, he wanted to get back to his country. And he said something in the ear of the Shaykh without looking at, because he can't see the money, just goes in his pocket, give the boy all of the money that he had. That's how those ulama were. Al-Albani became sick. The lady came to him in the hospital. At that time, he's sick, he's gonna die. The lady said, I owe the bank 9,000 dinar. I took a loan. Can I borrow from you some money? The Shaykh sent one of his students, Muhammad al-Khatib, go find out the reality of her story. He found out that the reality was as she said. Al-Albani gave the lady 7,000 dinar as a loan. The lady came back to the hospital with her children to thank him. She was happy. He gave her 1,000 dinar and told the lady, this is in addition, it's just for you, a hadiyah. When she left, he said to the students who were there, he said, I wish that Allah Ta'ala would make me a millionaire so that I can save 100 women like this from the riba of the banks. So his generosity and the examples of his students, the student who comes to him in his mektaba, he used to need people to write for him because he got old. So this student will come and he will write for him a few days, and he brought with him a book. And Al-Albani said, let me see the book that you have. The student is nervous. Is he going to look at the book and criticize me for having this book and so forth and so on? He took the book and he went inside and left the man in his library. He came out sometime later in the day. He was still in his library. He gave him back the book. The man left. He found in the book 1,000 dinar. And those examples that his students mentioned about him are many for the students as well as for those individuals who just came to him in need. He was an individual who was generous. The ibadah of Al-Imam Al-Albani. Al-Albani performed 35 Hajj in Al-Islam. His students said that he used to make Qiyam al-Layl. In the Qiyam al-Layl, he would do it different ways. Sometimes in the Qiyam al-Layl, he would make Salat and he would make Ruku' for 20 minutes. He would make Sajda for 20 minutes. He would make the Qiyam and recitation for 45 minutes to an hour because that was the Sunnah. Sometimes he wouldn't do it that long. Sometimes it would just be normal and anyone can handle it. Sometimes it would be very long. One of his students in the process would want him to slow down, so the student would come to him while they're waiting. After the salat, 2 rakats, he's making dhikr, which is the sunnah, before you do the rest of the prayers. The student, he wants a reprieve, so what he does, he thinks he's smart. He comes to ask the imam about an issue. And Imam Al-Albani said, now is not the time for knowledge. Now is the time for ibadah. And then they get up and they make those prayers. Many people cannot continue that with him. The point, ikhwani, is the man was, rahimahullahu ta'ala, the embodiment of being an imam, a person who can be followed. One of the hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he said, the age of my ummah, the Prophet said, is that the majority of the people will live between 60 and 70 years old. And the minority of them will pass 70. Al-Albani said, I am from that minority. He was 83 at the time. He said, I passed 70. I hope Allah put barakah in my life and so forth and so on. He said, but because of much of the innovation that I see in the ummah that has been taken as the sunnah, the shirk in the ummah that has been taken as tawheed, sometimes I wish that I would die. He said, but after knowing the hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let not any of you wish for death because of something that happened to you. But if you have to make that dua, then say, oh Allah, if death is better for me, then bring it. And if living is better for me, then bring it. The last will and testament of Al-Albani. And look what that man wrote 2 weeks before his death, what he wanted the people to do when he died. And you'll see a man of the sunnah. An imam had a library that will fill this masjid up. He could have given that library to any of his students. He didn't give it to his students. Maybe they're going to be upset with each other. What did he do? He gave it to the University of Medina because the university benefited him.